Yeah, we get this a lot. Water is very political in Australia, and to the extent that, as an example, the Victorian government is spending $5 billion on a desalination plant. They could have spent $2 billion on water recycling and achieved more of a result, but that's what they chose to do. Now, the Victorian population is somewhat annoyed, to be understated, about that, because their water bills are going to double over the next 5 years to cope with this. Now, probably 6 years ago, in most areas of Melbourne and most cities around Australia, having a rain tank was illegal. And then the governments in every state said, go on, now put in a rain tank, we'll give you some rebates. There is a lot of scepticism that local councils, which is equivalent to a municipality here, would find out through satellite imaging and also through the rebate program. A lot of people didn't claim their rebates because they thought that the council would find out that they have a tank. They all expect that the local council is going to raise taxes on those tanks in another 5 years' time. They have the ability to do it, but I think a similar approach will happen in the US, maybe not now, but in 5 years when water is really becoming an issue here, to the extent it was in Australia, that any local municipality that brings in extra charges for water tanks will face electoral suicide. But I don't think the US is quite there yet. You can still do things, but within 5 years, people will have found their voice and will simply vote out anybody who starts taxing tanks, if they've been allowed to put them in now. I understand in places like Colorado there is that approach. You know, it's not your water that falls on your roof. That's a water allocation for farmers further downstream.
Bill Hoffman has a question.
While the microphone's coming, if I can add to that, the tendency has more been towards rebates than charging, because what's in Australian cities, a lot of the water falls in the city, but the catchment for the dam is outside the city, and often where the rain doesn't fall so much, and so the water utilities are keen for water tanks to go in because they're catching water in the cities, and it's alleviating the need for the water utilities to put in the costly infrastructure themselves. That cost is partly being passed on to the householder.
Yes, first place is a former officer for ARCSA, the American Rainwater Catchment Systems Association, which I say is putting in a plug for everybody to look at that. It's interesting. I wanted to respond to your comment about could we be totally off the system. If you're relying on rainwater in Las Vegas, I don't think you're going to catch enough. And so again, it's geographical. And it's just like the outdoor use. If you go to Las Vegas, 60-70% of the use is outdoors. If you go to Connecticut, 10% is outdoors. So it's a very geographical type thing. And but it also gives us a lot of opportunities. And I just would like to go beyond this, looking at some of the commercial side things and looking at the AC condensate, combined systems. We've been talking about individual either doing gray water or rainwater, but I throw to whoever wishes to address this on the panel, what are our opportunities by looking at collecting all the sources and using them on a given site, say at a commercial site?
Yeah, it's definitely, Bill. We're seeing that a lot. There's as John mentioned, there's some real low-hanging fruit there. Some of the buildings we're doing, we're scraping for every drop of water we can, and it's fit for purpose. The large part of the water stream come from Blackwater, and that's being treated to a high-end use for a high-end quality for high-end uses. It's much simpler in those buildings to collect the rainwater and use that for irrigation, given especially in a commercial building there's not a large amount of landscaping in many cases. Air conditioning condensate is a perfect example. I mean, it's condensate, it's so clean. So, why not use it? And it really just becomes a minimal risk to reuse, and maybe a small chlorine residual is what's required in order to just protect the fact that it's not potable water, and the risk is not just about the treatment. It's the main thing about, and I think of relevance to this audience from plumbing mechanical officials is the preventing cross connections. You've got to not just look at what the water quality is like when it's going to be used as intended through the second set of pipes, but what happens if you do end up with a cross connection, and what happens if somebody accidentally drinks it? So you really got to look at what would be the risk if that happened, and make your treatment appropriate to that eventuality, and then bring in the various mitigating measures such as backflow prevention and audits and different colour piping for the non-potable and potable pipes.
Mike, what are your thoughts?
Well, actually, I wanted to make a statement about something we were talking about a while back with the health and safety concerns and whether or not we should disinfect rainwater and et cetera. One of the things I wanted to make sure everybody in this room understood is there are statistics out there that basically show and are documented that in this country alone, there are over 6 billion user years worth of exposure to on-site gray water reuse, and there's not a single documented illness attributed to contact with any on-site reused water. So even though the health and safety issues are a huge concern out there with these types of uses and systems becoming popular, it's really never been documented that it should be an issue.
Can I just add to that? It's a very good point. From a practical point of view, we can talk about the human health concerns till we're blue in the face, and they should be taken seriously. What we need to do, I think, is make sure that these buildings operate with these systems where nobody really knows that it's happening. Sure, they need to be educated that it's there, but after that, they more or less forget it, except for the plumbing contractor who's going to go in there and do the maintenance, or the service provider. We've been involved in a project where not only did they use recycled grey water for toilet flushing, but they used treated rainwater for hot water use, which went into the showers, and it was a public housing project. And while the water quality was absolutely fine, I was in a meeting recently which really got quite heated through some very, I might say, irrational or ill-informed debates, but that's what we're dealing with, folks. Sometimes because they're showering in it, they felt that all kinds of health conditions were coming from that. Very difficult to prove, but really best just to stay away from those sort of applications when you can do so much with non-potable reuse, the type of applications we talked about.